Good morning. Happy New Year. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I am excited to be back, especially the first week of the year. I think if anything, this is a testament to me saying, okay, this is what my goals are for 2024. And I'm trying to come in bold. You know what I mean? For 2024. So, okay, super cool. And so and I'm really excited. We have our guest for the year this year is Jeff Tunn. He's the first guest for 2024, and I'm excited to bring him on. But before I do that, I want to talk a little bit about what I have going on. Now, when I started this in 2022, this really was an opportunity for me to develop a strength, develop just a comfortableness with coming online. Right. And just coming online, coming on live. And so this is my, third year just going strong with it. And so I'm really excited about that. So Be Bold, Be You. So my name is Tracy Justice, and I'm the CEO and founder of Be Bold, Be You, which is an HR-focused company. And so it's really about human capital strategic planning. So it's really a fancy word for saying skills-based strategies, right? How do we think about skills-based strategies when we're looking at our talent acquisition plan, our people strategies, right? And then not only that, how do we, have something to supplement that, complement that performance management planning? Oh, I love that. Right? Like, being able to set clear goals and then being able to understand, where we are in terms of reaching that. Right. So those are my HR, specialized focused areas. And I love to express that in different ways. So that's either in executive coaching, training, development, mastermind workshops, think tank, virtual programming company, so especially like a podcast like this. And so, you know what? I was going to share something, but you know what? Let's go ahead and just bring Jeff Tunn on, and just kind of, and share the screen with him. So happy New Year, Jeff. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Tracy. Happy New Year to you and to all the listeners and viewers out there. It's 2024 is going to be it's going to be a bold year. So let's do it.
Yes, a bolder year, right? Like, let's definitely do it. And we got to start out strong. So what I'll do is I'll do it a fun way of introducing, talking about your bio. So I'm going to read some of it, and then I'm going to ask you to fill in some of the gaps, because I thought it was very interesting. Some of the things that was written on there, and I definitely didn't want to just, kind of gloss over that. So I'm going to kind of start it off. So you're a sought after speaker, author, and thought leader, having led powerful teams and built successful information technology department for over 30 years. Now, that's awesome. I'm going to get into I'm going to ask you a question about that here soon. So, but as a speaker, author, advisor, and coach, your mission is to change the face of IT, saying businesses today are demanding more from their technology and their technology leaders. Okay, that's a bold statement right there. So tell me about that, and then talk about the 30 years.
Well, I'll start with the 30 years because it's now about 40 years. I probably need to update my bio. I've been doing this a long
40
time.
40 years is good.
But the changing the face of IT actually came about. I was working with a group of emerging HR professionals through Next Gen HR, Next Gen Talent, and was talking to them about as they're going into the HR roles, how they can best help information technology professionals. And it really struck me that what my focus has been and continues to be is that changing the face of IT. I think when you think about an IT professional, many times we have this stereotypical image that comes in our mind of the guy in the back room with the horn-rimmed glasses, hunched over his keyboard, and that's really not IT anymore. IT needs to be more communicative, more collaborative, working more and more with their colleagues in the business as well as their clients and customers, and more skills-based, as we were talking about before the show, Tracy, and also more diverse, right? When you look at the diversity numbers in technology-related fields, they're horrible. In order to solve the challenges that business is faced with today, those challenges are so complex. We need diversity of background, diversity of experience, diversity of thought, bringing people together to attack
Yes.
those problems. And so to me, that's what I talk about when talking about changing the face of IT, is breaking down those stereotypes and having us be more communicative with people rather than just sitting in the back room, and driving diversity within our ranks.
Yes, you know what, and I love that, because when you think about it, because it can't be a silo, right? Because
Right.
the technology, if anything, technology is really that tool that should help bring everybody together, right? And
Yes.
so being able to bring everybody in the room and being able to understand that there are different experiences and different backgrounds and different ways that people use things, and being able to have all that understanding when creating, that technology plan, because
That's
it's
right.
like it's not in a silo. Definitely.
That's
Definitely,
exactly right.
definitely. Because I know I remember from back in the days, it just seems like, only the IT people would know what they're doing or saying. But then it's like, but I need to know what you're saying or what you're
Yeah.
doing so that I understand what I'm supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
Because then I don't know what I'm
We
supposed to be
love
doing.
to
Okay.
talk in hieroglyphic language and acronyms, and that we talk in the language of tech, and we should be talking in the language of the business, and understanding what does our
Yes.
technology do for the business, and how to explain
Yes.
that, right?
Yes.
And you're not going to be able to do that by staying in the data center and sitting in the back. You've got to get out and work with people side by side. You have to meet with HR, you have to meet with finance, you have to meet
Yes.
with the line of
Yes.
business to really understand what their challenges are.
I love that. I love that because it does seem like, each department kind of works separately, right? Like, it
Yeah,
might be the HR department does separate things and then the finance department does separate things. And it's like, no, we all speak the same language. The
yeah,
same language is the business, but we all express it or articulate it differently through different functions. And it may be through
yes,
technology, it may
yes,
be through the financial reports, it may be through HR. We're all doing this. We're all talking about the same thing. We're just doing
yes,
it differently. Yes. No, I'm with, oh,
absolutely.
yes. Preach, sir. And I know that, preaching is in your background.
Yeah, my dad was a preacher, so
Yes,
I got a
yes.
little bit of that in me, I suppose.
Yes, yes. So you hit it exactly, and I love that because I think it goes back to, and I maybe we talked about it because I know it was like a few months since the first time
Yeah,
we did talk, but it's not about talking about it, but it's about being about it, and
yes,
so it just seems like it's not about talking about this tech stuff. But being able to understand the tech stuff so that you can understand how to use it effectively within the business setting that
yes,
you're in. And
yes,
so, yes, I love that. And because I also see that you've done different, you were talking about diversity, you've done many different diversity panels. So maybe talk about that real quick, what that's been like, experiences, maybe, funny things or something that came out of those experiences. Cause I'm pretty sure you get asked crazy questions,
Well,
during.
I tell you, the funniest one was probably the first panel that I sat on, related to diversity. A good friend of mine, Robin Fleming, asked me to sit on a panel for the group here in Indiana called Women and High Tech. For
Mm-hmm.
those of you who might be familiar with that, and they asked me to sit on this panel, and we were going to talk about diversity in tech. And I came home and I told my wife that I was going to be on this panel. She said, "Well, why the heck did they ask you? You've never done anything." And I had to scratch my head for a little bit, because when I thought back on my career, I had probably more often than not, definitely more often than not, I had a female boss in
Okay.
technology. To me, it was just the way it was, right? Everybody was
Mm-hmm.
there. Everybody was there. So it was kind of funny that she was like, "Well, why are they asking you to do that?" I tell you, that started me on this path to really understand what the diversity numbers look like in tech. And when you think about it, so I run this networking group, or I used to run this networking group here in Indiana called the Indy CIO Network. It's now the Indiana CIO Network. And I was concerned about the numbers when you think about diversity, whether it's gender diversity, racial diversity. I was looking at those numbers, and again, they were abysmal. But the industry as a whole is abysmal. So how do we start addressing that? And it starts as young as you can start, right? It's letting girls know that tech is okay. It's not the bro culture anymore.
Yes.
Tech can be cool for girls and women as well. It's about breaking down those barriers of inclusion, making people feel a part of it. And you know, the other thing that really struck a chord with me was back in 2020 with the murder of George Floyd. And Tracy, I was stuck. It was like, oh my God, I want to do something.
Yes.
And what should I do? Right. So I reached out to a good friend of mine, Wayne Patrick, and Wayne is an African-American man that's been in tech for, probably longer than any of us. And I said, Wayne, I want to do something. And he said, well, you have a platform, you have a podcast, you have this networking group, use it.
Yes.
Right. And so we started inviting guests onto the podcast to explore race in tech, both from a perspective of the employment numbers, but then the unconscious embedded bias that ends up being in some of our technology, right? And how do we tear those walls down and make it more inclusive? And one of the things that we talked on just a few minutes ago, one of the ways to combat that is to make sure you have diverse teams working on the problem. Because then you get those diverse perspectives.
That's right. That's right.
And that's one small way to make a step. So it's something, as you can tell, I'm passionate about. I think, like I said earlier, I think to solve the problems that we are facing as businesses and as society, we need diversity to be able to do that.
Yes, because I think that, if anything, we're not really serving a homogenous, market.
Right.
Maybe if we were, because, and I don't know if it's up for, discussion, but I was watching something where it said that, back then it was all about just marketing to one market, just one group of people. So, but, I think it seems like it's taking a few for some people to realize that, if you want to be competitive in today's market, it's really not about, requiring a mandate of anything, from government or from anything. Honestly, it should just be a smart business choice.
Yes.
You have to have diversity, because how do you know, you may have one product, but different people from different areas may use that product differently.
Yes.
And if you're not aware of that, then you're unable to really capitalize or even leverage that and truly enhance that experience for that group of people that maybe you realize, like, wow, that's a secondary use that we've never thought about. How can we enhance it for them? But it's going to require diversity. Truly,
and even from if you put yourself in the business owner perspective, whatever, even from a selfish point of view, you look at all of the studies about diversity show that companies that are diverse are much more profitable than those that aren't. So why wouldn't you want to do that? And I know you're a fan, Tracy, of skills-based hiring. And so sometimes you find these skills in unexpected places. If you need a skill, you have to open the aperture and look. If you go to the same university pool every time you're doing a hiring spree, you're going to have people that are all thinking the same.
Yes.
So look in different places, look in the different universities, look in the alternative education path for people that have a different perspective.
Yes. And you know what? I even love, and I'm an advocate for, volunteering. because sometimes, we overlook people that are volunteering or do things within the volunteer or nonprofit sector. And, maybe they have a different title, but they're doing things that are very similar within your organization. So being able to understand the work or the skills that are actually going, that are actually foundational to the work that, you're looking for, as opposed to just putting a title on it, but actually looking at, what are these competencies that we're actually looking for? And maybe, it may not be like, for example, a packaged project manager, but maybe you might notice that that person has so many skill sets that fall under project manager. And all you need to do is bring that person in, train them, and just make sure that you have the right resources in place. So now, you're not competing with other people who may be looking for an established person who has the, resume experience. Maybe this person has like full on hands-on experience. And because you're able to really understand that and capture that, you're able to pull into a whole new pool that you didn't even know was out there because you were thinking about it differently. I mean, no, I totally love it. And I apologize because I know that we're going to be talking about your book. So I know I'm like, totally
no, this is great. This is a great
going down this way. But I love the skills base, because I think for a while though, Jeff, struggled. And you know what? I struggled earlier, and I apologize for that because I did leave you on the screen alone. I don't know what that was. So I know that looks so unprofessional, but that's the thing with being live. Like, you just don't know what's going to happen.
Right. That's right.
But you got to roll with it,
Yeah, you do. And I just kept talking. So you just
appreciate that. And I was just so grateful.
We'll just keep going.
Yes.
Because I host a podcast as well.
Yes.
Status Go. And I can't tell you how many times we're not live. So I've got the benefit of, I can say to our audio engineer, hey, Eric, hold on just a second. Or, hey, Eric, I'm gonna repeat that. You don't have that luxury.
No. And it's funny. And it's because and it's funny because the reason why I did it this way is to set myself up just so that I don't procrastinate, because I am like a perfectionist procrastinator, sort of, if you give me the chance to really live that out, I will live that out. And I realize that I've got to set myself up for success, right? As a coach, I have to set myself up for success. And setting myself up for success is, we're just going to do this live, because if I have to record it and edit it, I will edit to the point there's nothing to show. And because I'll say, oh, I don't like how I said that. I don't like how I did that. I don't like how I blinked my eye. I don't like how I did that. And before you know it, we just don't have anything to share. So I realized I just have to be bold and just be live and just let people know, the road to success is sometimes messy. Sometimes it's up and down. And I feel like we've got to show people that, so people can kind of get off of this, I need to be perfect before I do anything. And that's really what the Bold Move Challenge is. It's like, you don't have to be perfect before you do something about what you want to do in your life. You can just do it and figure it out. And if people laugh at you, one day they won't.
It'll never happen.
That's right. That's right. If you don't, it'll never happen.
Yep.
No, I totally agree. So, no, but I thought that was super cool that you had that the women in high tech on your list of different appearances. And I just thought to myself though too, okay, wait, what? But just because we're talking about women in high tech does not mean that a male perspective does not provide, a great understanding, and which is not necessarily needed, because I think all perspectives are great. And I think you having a woman boss, and, being able to work with a woman boss and what that probably, felt like, and then and then compare that to the myths that maybe some people may have working with a woman boss. I think you have great perspective. So I would definitely have you on the panel as well. So So then I quickly changed that. I went from judgment to no, I totally get it. It makes sense.
It was an interesting panel, and I wish I could remember one of the questions Robin asked me was something about if I were a woman, how would I talk to people about technology, something like that. But it was interesting to think about, and one of the outgrowths of me being on that panel was I mentioned the Indiana CIO network, and I asked a dear friend of mine, Teresa Conroy Roth, I said, so where are all the women technology leaders? Why don't they come to these events that we hold for the Indiana CIO Network? And she says, well, gee, Jeff, I don't know. Why don't we ask them? So she put together a dinner with 20 women in technology and me.
Ooh.
So shoes on the other foot, right? I'm walking into this dinner event with 20 women that I knew them all very well.
But but not together.
I was nervous all day long, Tracy.
Yes.
And every time one of the other women would come into this dinner, so I arrived about, when there was about half the attendees there. Every time one of them came in, I felt like I had to explain what I was doing there. Why am I there in this group, right?
Yeah.
And I'm not saying my experience matches the women that are out there in any way, shape, or form. But I'm saying just a little bit. I got a little bit of a taste of what that feels like to walk into an event when you're the only.
Yes. And so it's interesting. So what did you learn from that? What did you learn from that event?
What I learned is that when you are having events, or when you're in an event like that, and there are underrepresented groups that are there, whether it be women, whether it be African Americans, whether it be Asian, whatever it is, make sure that they feel welcome and included.
Yes.
Right. And bring them into the conversations. Make sure that the conversations are open to everybody, and that you're not huddling in cliques, right?
Yes.
So that people feel like when they walk in a room, they should be there. That's probably the number one thing that I took away from that.
Honestly, and I think that can be just applied, in every sort of aspect, just no matter what, whenever you're networking, because it is tough when you come into the room. And sometimes there are opinions, and especially if you're not, or if you are, not the majority within the room, it's kind of, it's not as easy when you hear everybody saying yes, and for you it's like no, that is not the case. Like no, that's not true. And you want to be able to speak that, but you definitely don't want to cause an ism, but you want to be able to say, this is not necessarily the case, and can we talk about this? That can be tough to be able to do that. It's not easy to go into those things. But I think for me, what I realize is that the world is just moving too slow for me. And if I'm being totally honest, I just feel like the world's moving too slow. Organizations, I feel like sometimes people are just moving way too slow. And I've just gotten to a place where I've decided that, as much as I like to say I'm the extroverted introvert, because like I'm really shy, but I will try, I'll put myself out there just because I want to stretch. I've decided that I'm just sometimes I am the only person in the room. And sometimes, I'm coaching myself, quietly to myself, like say something, or, say something, just because it's just
it's hard.
It is hard. It is hard. And then, sometimes you think if I say something, because what I realize is that once I say something, then another person will probably raise their hand, and then they'll say something. And before you know it, we're all talking. Rolling. Yes. And we're talking. So sometimes it's like, okay, be brave, be bold, just do it. But it's not always easy, always easy at all. So that's super cool. So then, so you said earlier that there was a question that somebody said, well, as a woman, how would you describe technology? Okay. So then I'm curious, what was your answer?
Well, I don't recall exactly what my answer was back then, but I think, what I try to do is encourage women and girls that are looking at different careers to understand their skill set, going back to skills, and making sure that they know where those skills can be applied in technology roles. That we're not a bunch of gamers, and I'm not slamming gamers in any stretch. If you look at our technology advancement, a lot of times they come from the gaming world and then into mainstream. But the stereotype is that, it's a bunch of guys sitting in the back room playing video games.
Yes.
And breaking that down, right, and showing women and girls that it can be fun, it can be exciting to be a part of that. You can meet your needs through working with these technology professionals to build something and create something. And I think the more we talk about that, and the younger we talk about that, the more we're going to start hammering on these numbers. The other aspect of this, Tracy, that you see is women in leadership, African Americans in leadership in technology. Something happens as we move up the chain. The women drop out, or they don't get promoted, or we need more women executives to show women and girls that that they can be, right? They can see themselves in that role, and that you can succeed. And I think of some of the great women leaders around the Indianapolis area in tech. Tracy Kemp comes to mind, and others, as they are role models for everyone as they grow in their careers. I think is fantastic.
See, and I love that. And you know, and you brought up, it reminded me of something that I think is always key to kind of talk about when we talk about representation up at the top, right? Because typically, I would say, from my experience, as you get closer to the top, it gets a little bit tougher.
Yeah.
Right. Because it seems like, the people that are more inclusive or try to be inclusive are sometimes lower. Right. Well, once you get higher up, sometimes it's that mindset that you have to work with. And so it does get tough. Right. So it's like, you can have representation up at the top, but how do you, ensure the mindsets of those people? And I think that's the break. Right. Because I know, like, with the state of Indiana, I know that they have like the 40,000, is it 40 billion Hoosiers, Black and brown Hoosiers in technology. I know that there's many different programs that are supporting this. And I think that idea and that goal is just so awesome. What I do hope that happens with that goal is that people remember that just because, we're providing resources to people, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to be able to succeed with those resources if the mindsets of the people that are higher than them, have not changed, right? Because then, then they have to subdue themselves to that mental stress of, do I just assimilate? Do I just deal with this? Can I just, because the pay is good, so should I just, so it's always that, just that tough spot. But it doesn't mean that the work should stop, right? It just means that, as we find people that are just bold enough to put themselves in that situation and then maybe help coach the people around them and say, okay, that wasn't nice what you said. So let's talk about that. Let's maybe find a better way to do that. But, because I like to say not cancel, because I think that when we start to threaten people with canceling, I think that that's when people just start to double down on just, on a negative or just a negative view, because they just feel like I just need to double down on this. But I think if we just get to this place where we can just have conversations, I think, we provide people an opportunity to just learn for themselves. I don't know what came up for you, or
I totally agree. We've had these initiatives for years, and yet statistics show the numbers don't change much. I think you're exactly right when you say it's got to be bottom up, but more importantly, it has to be top down. And it's got to be a group of leaders that can look at themselves without any of the guises of self-deception and say, how am I contributing to this, or how am I combating this? Until they realize that, it's not going to change, right? They need to be able to take steps. And we do this training and such, but it's got to be broader than just training, right? It's got to be put into action.
Yes.
whether it's coaching. I know you do coaching with folks, whether it's starting with executive coaching and talking with people about how they're showing up when they may not realize how they're showing up. I think that's the way that it has to start to solve that problem.
Awesome. And absolutely. And I think this is a perfect segue to your book. And then, because let me make sure that I say it exactly and not try to make up my own title. So let me go back to the first page. So everything I learned about leadership, I learned from Lewis and Clark. And what I love about this book, though, is that when I think about the word DEI, and this is part of like my Bold Ideas program, I like to talk about DEI conversations, but I feel like this is DEI. Like, when I read this, because my biggest peeve is that I've had when people think about, treating each other with respect, they think is not considered a DEI topic. And honestly, that to me, in my opinion, is DEI.
Yeah.
Now I believe that sometimes people may focus only on social justice. And if they focus on that aspect, then maybe people might think, oh, well, that's just what DEI is all about. And it's just like, no, DEI is so much bigger.
Yeah.
There's just so many aspects to DEI. And sometimes people like to specialize on just one little section. But all of it, I think the ultimate saying of DEI is that, let's just treat each other with respect and just realize that diversity wins because diversity is the world. And let's just treat each other with respect. How you want to, label it is your business. But like in your book, this is how we work better together, guys.
Absolutely. Yes. Well, and that book, I wrote that book several years ago. I love the Lewis and Clark expedition, and we could talk for hours about the expedition. But I was actually challenged by a boss of mine back, in the early 2000s, probably. My wife and I had decided that we were going to take every vacation, every long weekend, and follow the Lewis and Clark Trail 200 years after they were there. And I'll remind the listeners about Lewis and Clark here in a second.
Yes.
But I would come back from those trips and all I would do is talk about Lewis and Clark. And I think my boss was a little tired of hearing about it. So he challenged me. He said, Jeff, what you ought to do is you ought to look for the leadership lessons in the story. And I looked at him and I said, Ron, you're nuts. It was 200 years ago. How could we possibly learn anything for business today from people that lived 200 years ago? But I took him up on the challenge, and oh my gosh, he was right. There were so many lessons. In fact, I've made this part of my career has been a lot of focus on Lewis and Clark. And I know we're going to talk about how I'm being bold in 2024, and it's related to Lewis and Clark, but back to Lewis and Clark and DE&I. It's not a topic that you see historians talk about. It's not a topic that you hear anybody that knows the story. For your audience, this was back at the time of the Louisiana Purchase, and President Thomas Jefferson commissioned a military expedition to, and I'll use air quotes, to explore the Louisiana Purchase. And I say explore because although we didn't know what was out there, the native people certainly knew what was out there. They'd been living there for thousands of years. But we needed to go explore it to see, hey, what did we just buy from France? So we sent Meriwether Lewis and William Clark and a group of anywhere between 30 and 50 people at any point in time on the trip to explore this area. So diversity is not something anybody thought about in the 1800s. That was just not something we talked about, right? There were 5 million inhabitants of the United States, and 1 million of them were slaves. That was the United States. Right? And in fact, William Clark was a slave owner. And a lot of people will say, well, we can't study that. We can't learn anything from that because of that. And I say you can dig underneath that, and you can look. I have a great executive coach that I worked for years, Dr. Dan Miller, and he says history does not repeat itself, but it certainly rhymes. In other words, these patterns come back.
Yes.
Right. And so I think it's important to study the past. Anyway, when we talk about DE&I and Lewis and Clark, you look up the makeup of this group of people that went to the Pacific Ocean and back. And there was an African American, a man named York. York was Clark's childhood friend. They grew up together, but in those days he owned him. Clark owned York, right? But what we see happen very soon after leaving the St. Louis area is York becomes a full-fledged member of the Corps. He's sent out on his own to explore. He carries a rifle. He saves their life more than once by being the ambassador to the native peoples. Many of them had never seen a black person before. So York was seen as big medicine to some of the Native Americans. And
medicine, okay.
Yeah, right. And, but he wasn't the only one in this group. There was Sacagawea. She was a Native American woman. She was probably 16 or 17 years old when she went on this expedition. They hired her husband so that she would go along. She knew the Shoshone language, and they had learned that they were going to meet the Shoshone Native Americans when they got to the foothills of the Rockies. They needed someone who spoke the language. So they hired her husband, Toussaint Charbonneau, so that he would bring his wife along.
Okay.
And again, wife is he probably bought her. Let's call it real. And she was one of his wives, but she spoke Shoshone. So they hired Toussaint Charbonneau so Sacagawea would come with them. And she ended up being an incredible asset to this Corps of Discovery. They probably survived on the Great Plains because they had a woman with them. They traveled for months across the Great Plains and didn't see another human being except their own party. But the native peoples knew they were there. They were watching them the whole time. Oral history from the native tribes say, yeah, we knew they were coming through. We left them alone because they had a woman with them. Can't be a war party, so we're just going to leave them alone.
Oh,
right.
Okay.
And the other thing that makes her so incredible, Tracy, is in February, before they left, February of 1805, before they left the Bismarck, North Dakota area and traveled west, she gave birth. So she went on this trip. I can't describe the arduous travel that they went through. They're going upstream against the Missouri River, pulling tons and tons of gear. And they're surviving against nature. And here's this 16 or 17-year-old girl with a baby on her back doing the whole thing, right? You think it was hard for these guys, right? They don't have a baby on their back. They're not taking care of an infant, yet she takes care of this baby for 2 years on this trail. To me, it's just incredible. So back, I'll get off the story a little bit and onto the DE&I lesson in this. We talk about skills-based hiring, right?
Yes.
Lewis and Clark knew what the vision was. They knew what the mission was.
Yes.
They had defined the skills that they needed to achieve that vision, to achieve that mission. And they were not afraid to use skills from unconventional places, whether it be York, whether it be Sacagawea, whether it be these men that were half Shawnee, half French. They brought those people together and brought them into this group, into this team, because they had a skill that they needed to fulfill the vision and the mission. And I think that's the lesson for us today. We talk a lot in business about what's our vision, what's our mission. Have we really done the exercise of saying, if this is our vision, if this is our mission, what are the values we need to achieve that? And what are the skills that we need to achieve that? And therefore, how do we hire those skills that we need? And if we can train those skills in some ways. Lewis and Clark were a great example of, they started training the expedition from day one. The minute that they set up camp for the winter, they're training them for the journey ahead. And you know, we talk in HR terms about onboarding, right? And we onboard people into our organization, but it's I'll call it generic onboarding. It's for everybody that comes in. The onboarding is the same. Well, you may need to focus on a skill that I don't need to focus on. And I may need to focus on a skill that you got nailed, right? You're A+ in that skill. So why do we do it generically? We should focus on the skills we need to fulfill the vision and training our people in those skills. And when we can't train them, we hire those skills.
Exactly.
So that, to me, that's one of the major lessons from the expedition is skills-based hiring, we would call it today. And that's exactly what they were doing 220 years ago.
I mean, honestly, and I think that when you think about, you know, having a degree, you know, is great and awesome. And I think just having a degree already, you know, lets you know about the skill sets that a person may already, you know, may naturally have learned because they have earned a degree, right? Like, you know, maybe this person at least understands the concepts of presenting, understands the concepts of, you know, speaking or, you know, communicating, writing, you know, so having a degree kind of lets you know, okay, these are the skill sets that this person has, but then it also serves as a barrier. Right. Like it also serves as, because then people start to think that they don't have certain skill sets that they probably do, but they just didn't obtain it from the natural, you know, or the traditional way of learning.
They don't have the piece of paper.
Yeah, they don't have that piece of paper. And so a degree tends to be that barrier. And so yeah, you see that, you know, so out of these 10 lessons, you know, if you don't mind kind of going over, you know, each one real quick, like, are you okay with that real quick?
Oh, sure,
you know,
sure.
15 minutes. Okay. So
I
15 minutes
don't know that I can name all 10 off the top of my head.
I have them. I have them. I have them.
Yeah. So if you want, transparency is number one, right? And that gets back to what I was talking about earlier, about looking at yourself without any of the guises of self-deception. What are your strengths and what are your weaknesses?
Keeping it real with yourself.
Be real with yourself. And that's why we don't talk about the Meriwether-Lewis expedition, or we don't talk about the William Clark expedition. We talk about the Lewis and Clark expedition. Because they had complementary skills. And Lewis knew that, and he was transparent with himself, and he brought William Clark in to help. So transparency is one.
Yes. And then honesty and truthfulness.
Oh, isn't that so important in leaders? Being honest and truthful. You know, the story from Lewis and Clark is, as they were recruiting the people of the expedition, they could have painted this rosy picture of, hey, we're going on this adventure, this 3-year river cruise.
Right.
But instead, they talked about the fact that they might not be coming back. You know, they may not survive. This was a dangerous undertaking for them. At the very least, it was going to be harder than anything they'd ever done in their lives. So they were honest and truthful with them, and they continued to do that throughout the expedition. Is be transparent and talk and share. And I think as leaders today, we sometimes try to keep information right or wrong from those that work for us, when we should be open to sharing the information.
Yes. Because I always feel, and maybe, you know, I can easily say this as a person on the outside looking in, but like when I think about RIFs, right, reduction in force, and organizations that have to go about doing that, and you know, and I understand that. At the same time, the only issue I have with that is that, you know, if leaders were open, honest, and just about the issues and what's going on, I'm pretty sure that someone within the organization would be able to help, maybe come up with an idea.
Yeah.
Because I feel like, sometimes that high executive overlooks at the front line probably has more tactical information, more tactical knowledge than anybody, within the C-suite.
Yeah.
So definitely opening it up and saying, hey guys, the organization is in trouble. Yeah. Now, here's the deal. Worst case scenario, I'll have to let all of you guys go. But best case scenario is, but I think it goes back to the culture, right? Because if you already have the sort of culture where you're already honest, then you can have that sort of conversation and say, hey guys, we're not doing so well. What do you think that we should be doing? And then somebody probably could come up with an idea that could save the organization and save the jobs and maybe repurpose people within the organization, as opposed to just letting go and then trying to rehire new people. But that's just my thing. I'm sorry.
Oh, I could get on that soapbox. We could talk about that for an hour.
Yes.
Yep.
So the next one, accountability. Of course, I love accountability, but
yes. And I think it's accountability with consequences, right?
Yes.
How do you hold people accountable?
Yes.
How many times do we? I know we don't have water coolers anymore, but how many times do we have the water cooler gossip with Billy comes in late every day and seems to get away with coming in late, right?
Yeah.
We need to hold our teams accountable. But what I talk about in that book is it actually begins with yourself. You have to hold yourself accountable.
Yes.
To what you're going to say and do. If you're the type of leader that's always coming in 5 minutes late to a meeting because you're so busy, what message does that send to everybody in your organization? Hey, if you're busy, it's okay to come in late.
Yes.
So you got to hold yourself accountable. And Lewis and Clark use some interesting techniques that I talk about in the book.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Interesting. But I think it goes according, because what I like to do is that sometimes I don't try to take the current lens and add it to the past, because I think that if you add current lens to the past, then of course there's everything wrong with that picture, right?
Absolutely.
But yeah, definitely at that time, I that's the type of stuff that they did, but it was just like, whoa. That's how they kept everybody in check.
I think the lessons that come out of that, and what Tracy is referring to, is they would hold court martials, and many times the punishment was the gauntlet of switches. So that was pretty brutal, which appalled the Native Americans, by the way. When they witnessed it, they were like, "Oh my God, I can't believe you're doing that."
Disgusting.
Yeah. But the lesson in there was that they were held accountable by their peers, right? It was a jury, so to speak, of their peers that held them accountable. The men learned very quickly that there was going to be accountability, there was going to be consequences, and they understood the expectations. And the interesting thing about this three plus year expedition is there were 5, I think, court martials in the first year and none after that.
That's all you need is that example, right?
Right.
Yeah.
The lesson was learned. And I think we could take that to business today and not have people run the gauntlet of switches. Believe me, I'm not suggesting that, but hold people accountable, and people visibly see that you're holding people accountable.
Exactly.
And I think that makes a difference.
And it really adds, and I think that that's just part of the culture. Accountability has to be a part of the culture if you truly want to be successful, if you truly want to drive results, right? Because I've heard of organizations where they've taken away progressive disciplinary, and sometimes some people hear that and they say, "What? You're taking away progressive disciplinary actions out of your handbook? Your employee handbook? That's crazy." But I think that when you have progressive disciplinary actions, then what that does is allow managers to use it as a crutch, right? To not hold people accountable truly, then they'll look at it like, well, let me just make sure that I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. I'll go through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then we'll hurry up and get rid of them. But if you take away that, and then you say, all you have to do is just talk to the person. tell them what they're doing
Yeah.
wrong. Like,
Yeah.
you did not do that right. So what can I expect you to do the next time? Like,
Yeah.
if you have that conversation, where does accountability or performance issues become a problem? Where does it
Exactly.
be, where does the nastiness come into play?
Yeah.
When really we're not being crystal clear, and we're not holding people accountable and holding ourselves accountable, like you said. And I'm totally with that, because it's like, we've got to check in on our BS, right? Like, and hold
Yeah.
ourselves accountable to the things that we're doing. And if we have blind spots, if we're not doing what we're supposed to be doing, but we're trying to hold people accountable to what, so definitely.
Yeah.
Okay, so let me, because we got 10 minutes and I just love to okay, so then we have patience, seeks input, and then commitment.
Ooh, those are all so great, right? Patience is the lesson for us there is that as we look as leaders, look at some of our followers, there are some that are showing signs of emerging leadership, emerging potential, but sometimes we have to let them learn hard lessons. We need to be patient with them, and we need to let them try and fail.
Yes.
Sometimes. The story from the expedition is a guy named George Shannon. He was the youngest person on the expedition, and he had a propensity for getting lost. Not a great skill in an explorer.
Yes.
But the captain saw some potential in him, and they coached him. They taught him. And later on in the expedition, he fulfilled some great aspects of the expedition, including helping to publish the books about the expedition when it was over. The seeking input is something I think that we've touched on a little bit here, Tracy. You can't know it all from your vantage point of your organization. You cannot know it all, and you have to seek input from those who are in the trenches doing the day-to-day work.
Yes.
And that perspective. And I teach this leadership program that we'll talk about here in a minute. And one of the metaphors that we use in there is that of a river. Your team is in the river. They're fighting the current all day, every day, the chaos of the current. You're, as a leader, a lot of times you're up on the banks. You can't even see the rocks that they're having to navigate around.
That's right.
You don't feel the pressure of the current. Sometimes as a leader, you have to go down and get in the water with.
That's right.
To really experience that. So to me, that's seeking input. And then commitment can best. So this picture behind me, I know it's hard to see, but it's Meriwether Lewis and a few of the Corps crossing the Continental Divide. And it's at this moment that Lewis has what my wife and I call his "oh crap" moment.
Okay. Yes. Oh, yes. Yes.
They thought that the Rocky Mountains were going to be just like the Appalachians, Alleghenies, and the Blue Ridge Mountains. That once you crossed over them, it's a gentle path down to the ocean, and all was going to be grand and glorious. And what he sees at about this moment is mountain range after mountain range after mountain range.
Yes.
And the question that I raised with myself as I was thinking about this and the lessons is why? Why keep going?
Yeah.
They'd already accomplished so much. They already knew there was the water route to the Pacific ended right at that moment. There was no water route to the Pacific. Why keep going? But to me, it was that commitment that they had made to Thomas Jefferson, is that they were going to see it to the end. They were going to go to the Pacific Ocean. And so they kept going. And same thing with the men. They could have turned around, the men and women, Sacagawea, they could have turned around at that point.
Yes.
But they kept going.
Yes.
And that, to me, that's that commitment.
Yes, definitely. And then you have part two.
Yes. because sometimes there's different ways to make decisions, right? You can do a stroke of the pen. I'm just going to write a policy, and that's the decision. Or you can use I'm going to dictate. I'm going to command. This is what we're doing. I'm the decider. I'm going to do it. You can do it by consensus, right? You can
Mm-hmm.
talk and come up with what the plan is, or you can put it to vote, majority rule,
Yes.
right? What the captains did was they used different strategies for making decisions at different points in the expedition.
Mm-hmm.
At one point, they're at decision point where the river forks and they didn't know which way to go, and they really managed that one almost by consensus. They gathered information and said to the crew, "This is the way we're going," and the crew buys in.
Mm-hmm.
Right? They could have just said, "We're going that way."
Yeah, that's right.
Later on in part two, it was where to camp for the winter when you get to the West Coast, one side of the river or the other. And to those of us here in the Midwest that know the White River or maybe the Wabash River, that may not sound like a big decision, but the Columbia River, where it flows into the Pacific Ocean, is 2.5 miles across. The weather on the north side is vastly different than the weather on the south side. The terrain is vastly different. The native peoples were vastly different. So where to stay? Well, they put it to vote, and everybody's vote counted. They list in their journals the names of everybody, including York, including Sacagawea. Their votes counted, and the majority ruled, and they camped on the south side of the river. So that different ways of making decisions, I think, is important.
Yeah, that's right. Because like sometimes you have to be able to adapt, be situational, realizing that different situations are going to call for different types of leadership, and being highly aware of who you are so that you know who you need to be in that moment. So definitely. So then let's see. Oh, okay. So then we have about 4 minutes, and then integrity and character. Well, let me ask you this. Are you okay with going just a bit over, or?
Oh yeah, I am if you are.
Okay, because I'm fine with that. Okay, so then we have integrity and character, admits mistakes, flexibility, and takes risks.
Yeah.
And then we'll jump into, and then I think that's a perfect segue into being bold, because taking risks, right? So, okay.
There's so many important lessons in each of those four. Integrity and character, with social media today and the proliferation of everybody's carrying a camera, everybody's carrying a video recorder. We have to exhibit, as leaders, we have to exhibit integrity and character 24/7, because it will bleed over into your personal life or into your work life. Those pictures at the kegger from your college days, they'll come back. They'll come back to haunt you at some point, right? So you've really got to take care to always show integrity, always have high character, because it will impact you. It will impact the way your teams view you, and it will impact your organization. And there's a great story from Lewis and Clark, but in the interest of time, I'll just say, hey, read the book.
Is the book on the link? If I share the link as we're talking about that?
The book is on my LinkedIn profile, so you can get it
on
from
your LinkedIn profile.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And it's just, to call it a book is probably a glorification. It's really just a short PDF that goes through that. I'm actually in the progress of writing a much longer book on the same concepts. Going into more detail.
Then this is like the prelim, so I love that.
Yeah. So admit mistakes goes along with integrity and character, right? Leaders, we're not right all the time. In fact, we're wrong a lot, and we need to be able to admit that we're wrong or admit we don't know something. And that's the lesson that we learned from that same incident about integrity and character that I mentioned. And then flexibility and takes risks are the last two, right?
Yes.
So flexibility is, as the Corps was heading back east, they were coming home finally back to the United States. They encountered the Nez Perce Indians, who they had encountered the fall before on their way out at the gap to cross the mountains. And the chiefs warned them that the snow's too deep. You can't cross the mountains. It's about April when they're there. and maybe March. And the chiefs say, no, you can't cross. But the Corps were like, no, we're the Corps of Discovery. We're going to keep going. So they kept going. And it wasn't too long before they realized the chiefs were probably right. The snow was too deep. So they did something that they had not done in the previous 3 years, is they retreated. They turned back. And they went back to the Nez Perce, and they stayed there for almost 2 months before they could cross the mountains. And to me, that was the flexibility, right? You're not abandoning the mission and the vision.
Yes.
You're making a decision based on new information that you have, and you're adapting your plan to it.
Yes,
and I think the leader knows how to do that, right? Then the taking risks. There's an interesting point that's happening right there. Is Lewis and Clark, while they're waiting those 2 months, is they decide to split the team into 4 groups and go out and explore some additional things. Now, some not so great things happened while they were on those, and we could talk for a long time about those. But to me, it was they were allowing their team to take educated risks. We're going to go out. They could have waited till they got back to Thomas Jefferson and say, hey, Tom, we learned this while we were out there, and we want to go explore that. And he would have said, well, okay, now go back and explore that.
Yes.
Or they had information that Jefferson didn't know. Let's go off and do that.
Yes.
And so they split into 4 groups, and they explored the Yellowstone River. They explored the Marias River. And some of these groups were not led by the captain, right? You got 2 captains and you got 4 groups. So they're letting these teams kind of spread their wings in a leadership perspective. And I think that's an important lesson for leaders today, is to show that flexibility.
Yes. And I think that also adds to, the reason why we have diversity is for innovation, but then it's also for, you also want to embed some of that taking risks sort of culture, so that, people can kind of, try something different, because how can you come up with something new if you're not taking risks, right? But then it also goes back to the culture, right?
Yeah.
Like, do you have the culture set up so that people can do all of these things?
Yes,
because,
absolutely.
But I love that. Thank you for sharing that, because I think that, if anything, to me, I look at that, like, maybe, there were some things that went on, and people might look at what happened in history back then and say, well, no, that's horrible. But I think that if we can find ways of looking back at everything that's happened in the past, in our own past, and find that there are some good things there. There's some things there that we can always learn from, that we can always leverage for now. And I think that it's awesome that you're able to do that from the Lewis and Clark expedition. So I just want to say kudos to your boss, who kind of, challenged you on that, because I think it's a great idea, especially for me. I like to look at lessons from the esoteric. So I like to look at it from, not only Bible, but just different, deep esoteric knowledge that, it still repeats itself over time, and it's still current today. So let's get into the bold life questions, right? Because right now it's all about being bold right here in 2024. And I like to say that it's time to soar in 2024. It's all about blessings galore.
Oh, I like that.
So, and so what are you being bold about in 2024, Jeff?
Well, as I was thinking about this for our conversation today, where I'm really being bold is I facilitate a leadership program that one of my clients had us develop, and thank you for putting that on the screen. It's a 3-day, I'll call it a leadership journey. We bring leaders from all over the country, from all walks of life, together in a beautiful setting. Most of the time we do it in the Columbia River Gorge in eastern Washington. In a lodge overlooking the Columbia River. And we dissect your leadership skills. We really break them down over a series of 3 days. It's a combination of classroom, of storytelling, of exercises, individual exercises and team exercises. And then we also do some outdoor things that are a little bit challenging to get you out of your comfort zone. Because as we all know, learning happens when you're pushing yourself in that outside that comfort zone. That's when real learning happens.
That's right.
And so it is a fantastic experience. We've been running it now for, I think 2023 was our third season of running it. So we're entering our fourth season. At that website that's on your screen, you can see the dates for this year. Those are open enrollment dates. Anybody can sign up to attend. We also do dedicated, if you want your entire executive team or a large group of leaders to do that, we can tailor it to your team. But that's what I'm being bold about. I'm doubling down on that program. It is by far the best leadership program I've ever been involved in. And I hate saying that because I helped develop it.
But you know, it is what it is, Jeff.
That's coming from the people that have taken it and completed the survey. Our average rating is 4.85 on a 5-point scale.
Okay.
And we walked away from our session in September with a perfect 5.0.
Okay. Congratulations.
So people, and they describe it as it's not only changed the way I work, it changed my personal life as well. So I encourage you all to check it out and come to that. So that's what I'm doubling down on. That's what I'm being bold in 2024.
I love that. And you know what, because what it looks like is that you were able to really pour into your own creative passion into this work. And so I think it definitely makes sense as to why, people are going to feel that from you, because you're putting your all. So therefore people are coming and they're getting a taste of that. So that definitely makes sense to me that it would turn out that way. And you can definitely brag about it, because if you don't, who will? You got to brag about it first, and then we can follow the trail and be like, okay, who can confirm that for us, Jeff? So no, that is totally awesome. So then if people go to this website, is it going to be the first thing they see? First thing they see? And then you said open enrollment dates. Can you share those dates with us out loud here?
Yeah,
let me
pop that up. Hold on just a second. The open enrollment dates are May 13 through 16, August 12th through the 15th, and September 9th through the 12th. So that's May 13 to 16, August 12 to 15, and September 9th through the 12th.
Okay, good. Super cool. I just wanted to make sure that we at least got that out there, just in case if they haven't had a chance to get to the website.
It's a fabulous program, and I recommend it to established leaders or emerging leaders. It doesn't matter what level of the organization you're in, you will benefit from it.
Awesome. So then what do you perceive any, because when we think about goals and setting goals for ourselves, right? I think one of the things that I like to really truly advocate and preach about is that, we've got to be aware of barriers or obstacles that can get in our way, so that we can realistically, really envision our goal, in a real way. Do you perceive any obstacles that could get in the way of you being able to double down and really promote, your work?
I don't see obstacles in being able to do that. Where I see the obstacles is inspiring people, encouraging people, influencing people to sign up and take advantage of it. The success of the program is based on the participants. We generally go from, we've done it with as few as 9 people, and as many as 32. The sweet spot is probably 25. That's where people get the most out of the program. So where I would like to see the program go is the Lewis and Clark Trail it goes clear across the country, right? So if you want a dedicated program, and we did one last year in Bismarck, North Dakota. So the topics can travel. So we had a company that said, we want all 20 seats, and we want it focused on these things here in Bismarck. So we did it there. So I encourage people to check that out. But I think in general, to answer your question, Tracy, I think what trips us up the most is self-confidence, right? That self-doubt creeps in as we're trying to be bold.
Yes.
We're unsure about ourselves. You're uncomfortable stretching and growing. And that
Yes.
starts to, it's that imposter syndrome, right? Starts
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
creep in. And I think of anything when we sit here in January and we think about our goals for the year, that's the piece that probably is the biggest impediment to our success.
Yes, yeah, it definitely is. And I will, and that's why it's all about be bold, be you, the bold life, right? Because I realize that that's my journey. For me, it's just that I have so many ideas and so many things that I want to do. And the only thing that's stopping me from doing those things is me and my confidence, right?
Yeah.
And so this is all part of that, right? Like just trying to be bold.
Yeah.
So no, but I think that's super cool and awareness, right? Like, I think that if we can admit that for ourselves, that it's that confidence piece that sometimes can get in the way of our self-promotion, because sometimes self-promotion seems weird, feels weird, or people say you shouldn't be doing it, but then who's
Yeah.
going to do it?
Yeah.
I mean, you can do it for free first, and then after that, you can pay people to do it for you, right? But
That's right.
you got to
That's
do
right.
the grunt work.
Yeah.
So no,
Yeah.
I totally get it. But okay, so then from 9 to 32, 25 is that sweet spot. No,
Yeah.
I totally understand. So marketing, and promotion, and just how do you
Yeah.
get it out there? I'm trying to
Exactly.
figure that out too. But I think that, as we go through this journey organically, we'll know it for real, right? And then we'll be able
Yes.
to truly share. And if I get it
Absolutely.
before you, I'll share it with you.
There you go. There you go.
And how, just moving forward, how will you, what words of wisdom and advice would you give for anybody who's trying to, promote? Because it sounds like self-promotion, either that or, you could talk about something else.
No,
Okay.
I like that. It's I think you have to answer the question, why me? Why would someone want to attend that program? Why would someone want to listen to my podcast? Why would someone
Yes.
want to hire me as a speaker?
Yes.
What value do they get out of that engagement?
Yes.
And if you can answer that honestly, again, going back to that guises of self-deception, if you can
Yes.
answer that honestly about yourself, then the promotion becomes easier.
Yes. Yes.
Right. It's when I launched my business and stepped out of the corporate world, that was the first question that my business coach had me answer is why me? Why would anybody hire Jeff Tunn to do anything?
Yes.
And you put it down on paper, then
Yes.
it becomes easier because you're talking about it.
Yes. And I love that. And I think that that's great advice, because it really boils down to, you've got to know who you are, right? Like, who are you and what is it that you do and what is it that you're trying to do and why, like, what is it about you that, who is you?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Exactly.
Yes. So I love that. So let me see if there's anything else, because I know I totally went over like 12 minutes, but it's back. But I did kind of I just enjoyed our first piece for talking about skills and just technology and what that looks like. And remember, I was telling you, I just wanted to go natural and go with the flow. So just thank you so much though, Jeff, for showing up on my show. Thank you all for watching and tuning in. Let's see if there anything. No, what? I will end with this quote. The bold life belongs to everyone, right? Like we can all plug into that and we can all be bold and do those things that we want to do with our lives. But the thing is that, only a few are bold enough to live it. Are you a part of that few? Definitely stay tuned for next week. I'll definitely share information about what's coming up for next week, because we'll definitely have a podcast for next week. And until then, have a beautiful day. Thank you so much, Jeff.
Thank you very much.